Okay, picture this. Pope Leo XIV, just weeks into his papacy. He's in a packed square in Rome. Trastevere, people all around him, kids, older folks, he's just blessed. And then unmarked police cars pull up. Officers get out, and they serve him with a warrant. Right there, in front of everyone.
Yeah, not tucked away somewhere private, out in the open.
Exactly. It's just, oh, well, it's a stunning image, totally unprecedented. How on earth did we get to that moment? How did that happen?
Well, from everything we've pieced together from the accounts, what happened that day was almost inevitable. It's this collision course, really. Pope Leo's very, very unconventional approach, hitting head-on with the Vatican's, let's say, deep-seated traditions and, frankly, anxieties.
His whole way of being Pope, right from the start.
Exactly. His election, how he immediately chose to live, how he acted, it all basically set the stage for this kind of confrontation.
And that collision, that's precisely what we're digging into today. This deep dive focuses squarely on these extraordinary events around Pope Leo XIV. Robert Francis Prevost, the 69-year-old American from Chicago. His simple, very accessible style. It gave a lot of people immense hope.
But it also, as we'll definitely see, stirred up some pretty significant resistance from within the Vatican structure itself.
So what are we working with here? What are our sources?
They're quite compelling, actually. We've got detailed accounts of his election those first few weeks. We also have, interestingly, internal intelligence briefings from inside the Vatican.
Really?
Yeah, plus reports directly from the Italian law enforcement side, giving us the detective's perspective, which is fascinating. And then, of course, the global reactions both inside and outside the church.
Right. So our mission here is to take all these different threads, these viewpoints, and weave them together. To pull out the critical insights, we want to understand not just, the what happened in that square,
but the why. What forces were really at play underneath it all? And the ripple effects, which were honestly completely unexpected.
Okay, so where do we start? With the man himself, the unexpected shepherd.
I think we have to. Pope Leo XIV. The accounts of his first weeks, they immediately highlight just how different he was. I mean, straight away, he refuses the apostolic palace.
This grand papal apartment, yeah.
He stays instead in the Domus Sanctae Marthae. It's basically the Vatican guest house, much more modest.
And it wasn't just his address, was it? His whole personal style screamed something different.
Absolutely. Seen walking among people, not hidden away, wearing just a simple white cassock. He actually refused the usual gold embroidery on the sash, apparently.
And that wooden cross.
That well-worn wooden cross, yeah. Belonged to a missionary in Peru. The sources really emphasize these weren't just like random choices. They were symbols. Very deliberate.
This simplicity, though, it might have played well outside the Vatican, but inside.
Oh, it caused friction. Real unease. Those intelligence briefings we mentioned, they were circulating particularly around Cardinal Parolin, the Secretary of State, and they flagged major concerns.
Like what? Security?
Security, definitely. His visibility was seen as a huge risk, but also his unpredictability. It just didn't fit the established protocols. It made people nervous.
You can almost hear the tension in Parolin's reported conversation with him, reminding him, Rome isn't Chicago, talking about the weight of the papacy, the shadows that follow it.
It sounds like a mix, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Genuine concern for safety, perhaps, but also maybe a bit of fear of losing control, fear of the unknown.
Because this pope wasn't playing by the old rules.
Not at all. And for those embedded in that system for decades, that felt fundamentally unstable. Security is paramount, yes, but his actions also disrupted centuries of tradition.
And Pope Leo's response to Parolin, the accounts make it sound, well, classic Leo.
Gentle but firm, yeah. He reportedly just smiled and said something like, "Peter, my dear friend, fear should never dictate how we serve God's people." And then, maybe the key line, "If I begin fearing shadows, I'll forget how to see people."
That says it all, doesn't it? For him, fear was the real enemy, not necessarily physical threats.
Exactly. In that perspective, that mindset, it really explains so much of what happened next, which brings us right to the catalyst. The reason for that scene in Trastevere.
The anonymous tip.
The anonymous tip. The sources are very clear on this.
Yeah.
It alleged illegal possession of classified Vatican documents by the Pope himself.
Just unbelievable. And this lands on the desk of Detective Marco Rossini.
Detective Marco Rossini. Reports describe him being just floored, utterly confused when he gets this warrant signed by a local magistrate. His reaction was apparently, "This makes no sense."
Who would even make such a claim, and why now?
That why now is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sources offer hints. Rossini noticed the warrant was, quote, deliberately vague. No specifics on the documents, no mention of any known breach.
Suspiciously vague.
Very. And his strong suspicion, noted right there in the reports, was that this whole thing that tipped the warrant, it originated from inside the Vatican, likely the Secretariat of State.
So what you're saying, what the sources strongly suggest, is this wasn't just some random legal hiccup?
Probably not.
It smells like an internal power play, doesn't it? Using an external legal tool, the magistrate's warrant, maybe to pressure him, discredit him publicly.
That's the strong implication, yes. It really highlights the level of internal resistance he was already up against just weeks in.
Okay, so Rossini has this legally questionable, politically loaded warrant, and he heads to Trastevere.
He and his team, yes. Dispatched to the Santa Maria in Trastevere parish.
Let's paint that picture. It's an ancient church, right? In a really historic, working-class part of Rome.
Exactly. And the Pope was there for something simple, something positive, blessing a new community center, doing exactly what his supporters loved, just being present, talking to kids, greeting older parishioners.
The reports say the atmosphere was joyful, peaceful.
Yeah, witnesses described it that way. The local priest, Father Joseph, was apparently quite moved. He reportedly whispered something like, "We haven't seen such joy here in a long time." It was that kind of vibe.
A glimpse of the church Pope Leo wanted, maybe? Rooted in the community, accessible?
Seems like it. But then, as the sun starts going down, that peace is shattered.
3 unmarked black cars roll up, silently.
And just their presence, it changed everything. Instantly. No sirens needed. You could feel the tension rise. Disbelief spreading through the crowd.
Rossini's officers were calm, professional.
Yes, but the air was thick. Everyone knew something was wrong.
Okay, the confrontation itself. The accounts describe it vividly. Rossini approaches the Pope. He's still surrounded by this now silent crowd.
Rossini's voice, the reports say, was respectful but tight. You could apparently see his discomfort.
And he states his purpose.
Lays it out.
Yeah.
Warrant for search, temporary detainment, suspicion of unlawful possession of classified documents. Saying this to the Pope in public.
The shock must have been immense. What was Leo's reaction?
Perfectly calm, according to the sources. He just stood still, hands clasped, looked Rossini right in the eye. The crowd gasped. Total silence fell.
And then?
Then, in perfect Italian, he just asked to see the warrant.
No anger, no defensiveness.
None reported. He read it carefully, no visible emotion. And then he did something unexpected. He basically offered up his own belongings for the search.
He facilitated it.
Yeah. And what did they find? His breviary, his daily prayer book, worn, marked up, some pastoral letters, that simple wooden cross, and a letter.
A letter, not classified document?
No, a deeply creased letter from a little girl in Peru asking for prayers for her sick grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And the accounts of Detective Rossini holding that letter, they're incredibly powerful. His hands were visibly trembling. His throat tightened.
Just imagine that moment, this detective expecting who knows what, and he's holding this child's prayer request.
There was this long silence, apparently. The world just holding its breath.
Yeah.
Rossini looking at this simple piece of paper.
And the Pope.
He just looked at Rossini. And the sources make a point of this. Not with anger, not with pride or defiance, but with compassion. Something that apparently unsettled Rossini even more.
That moment. Vulnerability not as weakness, but as something else, a different kind of strength.
That's exactly the insight that seems to emerge. And it really set the tone for what happened next, because things escalated.
Commissioner Elena Martelli arrives, Rossini's superior.
Right. She takes one look and knows this is serious. This is escalating, she reportedly said. She wanted to move things somewhere private, out of the public eye.
Makes sense from her perspective, contain the situation.
But Pope Leo refused. He insisted. Finish the search right here, in the square.
Why? What was his reasoning?
He said, let them see that their shepherd has no fear of light. And also, importantly, he wanted to protect the officers' dignity, too, so they wouldn't be accused of, hiding things in shadows.
He refused to let it become a hidden, murky affair. He forced transparency.
Exactly. So the search concludes. Nothing incriminating found. And Rossini has to make the declaration.
There's nothing here. This appears to be a false report.
Right. And at that moment, Pope Leo turns to the crowd and gives this just extraordinary impromptu speech.
What did he say?
He called the whole thing, this difficult moment, an opportunity. He actually thanked the officers for doing their duty.
Thanked them?
Yes. And he connected it to his time as a missionary in Peru. Said something like, True leadership begins when we allow ourselves to be questioned.
He's basically turning the tables on whoever set this up.
Completely. He hammered home this theme of transparency. The church must never be afraid of transparency, he declared. We must not demand the world trust us if we are not willing to be examined. It felt like a direct message.
Wow. How did people react? The priest, Father Joseph.
He was just stunned, called it unprecedented, said no pope has ever been searched like this.
And Leo's response?
Typical Leo, apparently. Disarming, he quipped, God writes straight with crooked lines, and then added with a smile, no pope before me was born in Chicago.
That must have broken the tension.
It did. The crowd, which had been silent, awestruck, there were ripples of laughter, and then apparently just this wave of applause. Not the outcome the plotters likely envisioned.
Definitely not. Okay, so while this is playing out in public, what's happening back inside the Vatican, in the Secretariat of State?
Unease, suspicion. You get this palpable sense of a core group resistant to Pope Leo's direction.
And this is where Father Alejandro Torretti comes in.
Yes. The sources describe him as about 45, a traditionalist, served under previous popes. His view of Leo was pretty clear. Too unconventional, too pastoral, too American.
He didn't like the changes.
He was deeply unsettled by all the talk of transparency, reviewing norms. It made him anxious.
And his role in the anonymous tip?
The sources confirm he played a part. He had shared a concern, maybe fueled by rumor, about documents being removed.
Right.
Looking back, he reportedly saw it not as seeking justice, but as an act of frustration, a protest born not from faith, but from fear.
So he wasn't necessarily trying to destroy the Pope, but acting out of fear.
That seems to be the nuance the sources suggest. He apparently knew his message could lead to an external investigation like this, but maybe didn't foresee the exact public drama. It was fear of change, fear of losing control, fear of where this pope was taking the church.
That distinction is important. It wasn't pure malice, maybe, but resistance rooted in fear.
Seems so. And while this internal drama was unfolding, the public event just exploded globally.
The media must have gone wild.
Absolutely massive coverage, headlines everywhere. Pope searched, Holy Father cooperates, but also things like a saint in the city, most human papal moment in decades.
And that image, the Pope standing calmly during the search,
went instantly viral. Hashtag humble shepherd, hashtag Leo, trending worldwide.
How is it interpreted mostly?
Overwhelmingly, not as a scandal, not as weakness, but as this radical act of openness, humility, authentic Christianity. It struck a chord with people looking for something genuine.
But not everyone saw it that way, inside the Vatican.
Definitely not. Those opposed were horrified. Cardinal Matteo Raldi's reported comment sums it up. This is what happens when shepherds stop fearing wolves.
So for them, it was a failure to protect the papacy, the institution, a dangerous vulnerability.
Exactly. But Pope Leo, his response wasn't finished yet. The next morning, he does something else completely unexpected.
What's that?
He goes to the Carabinieri station, where Detective Frassini worked.
He went to the police station.
Yes, with breakfast, apparently. His reasoning, according to the sources, he felt he cannot preach reconciliation from balconies. He had to walk among those who doubt us and love them anyway.
Wow. Leadership by actually showing up, being vulnerable again.
And the scene at the station? It's the total shock from the officers. The Pope personally thanking each one, asking about their families. Commissioner Martelli showed up, saw this, just quietly observed. He's serious. He's rewriting how the world sees power.
What about Rossini? Did they speak again?
They did. Rossini tried to apologize, for how we handled that day, how he saw you. It's a telling detail.
And the Pope's response?
Marco, you did your duty. Simple as that. Then he connected it to his faith. So is Christ. And they treated him far worse.
Powerful.
And when Rossini asked him, how do you carry this burden? The Pope's answer just cut right to the core. By remembering I'm not the point. He is.
This whole chain of events, it must have had consequences. Especially for Father Torretti.
Absolutely. This vulnerability, this grace, it opened unexpected doors for reconciliation. Torretti, the sources say, was consumed by guilt afterwards, couldn't sleep, was drafting his resignation.
They figured out the tip came from him.
Internally, yes, it was traced back. The reports note it was vague enough, maybe technically within protocol, no clear legal malice, but the intent, the consequences, they were obvious.
So punishment, reassignment.
That's what you'd expect, right?
Yeah.
But Pope Leo's decision was different. He asked to meet Torretti privately, not to reprimand, he said, but to understand.
A private meeting.
Yes. And the sources described the Pope's approach as incredibly gentle, framing it not as accuser and accused, but as brothers.
How did Toretti react?
He confessed, admitted his fear, said he was afraid that change meant compromise of the faith itself.
And the Pope?
Forgiveness. And then, this stunning invitation. "I'm asking you to serve," he reportedly said. "Let's begin again together."
He didn't sideline him. He invited him back in.
Exactly. Toretti's emotional response, described in the sources, shows just how powerful that act of forgiveness and trust was.
These individual stories are incredible, but what about the wider impact? Did this event actually change anything beyond these key players?
The ripple effect seems to have been significant. Sources cite tangible things, increases in mass attendance, longer lines for confession.
Really?
Yeah, and messages flooding in from all over the world. People who hadn't been near a church in years, even atheists, people of other faiths, saying they felt something, watching it unfold. It tapped into something deep.
What about Detective Rossini? Did it change him long-term?
The accounts suggest a profound personal shift. He started attending Mass again, started carrying his mother's old Bible, went back to visit Santa Maria in Trastevere just to reflect.
Wow.
His reported thought captures it. "Lord, I didn't believe you still showed up in people, but maybe I was wrong." It seems the Pope's compassion reached him deeply.
And Father Toretti? What happened with his service?
He wasn't just forgiven. He was given a real meaningful role. Director for Interfaith Dialogue, specifically with the Eastern Orthodox churches.
So bridge building.
Exactly. He apparently found the work far less glamorous than his old position in the Secretariat, but also sacred. He felt he was being reformed from within.
There's that incredible detail about the Orthodox bishop he met.
Oh, yes. The bishop knew his story somehow and told him, "You're fortunate your Pope leads not with his hands but with his wounds. Don't waste what he gave you."
Leads with his wounds. That really captures it, doesn't it?
It does. And it connects to that phrase that started circulating after the event, apparently coined by a student. The silence that spoke louder than power.
That captures the Pope's reaction during the search perfectly. The strength and stillness.
Exactly. And this wasn't just a one-off performance for the cameras. The sources confirm Pope Leo continued living this way, refused extra security, kept focusing on simple presence.
Like the interfaith gathering at St. John Lateran.
That's a perfect example, choosing that ancient symbolic church, personally greeting everyone, imams, rabbis, other Christian leaders, simple white cassock again. The message was unity through difference, not in spite of it.
And Father Toretti spoke there.
He delivered the opening remarks. And the sources mention he made a kind of public confession, didn't name himself, but spoke about past fear and resistance, linking it to the need for mercy and unity.
What did he say?
Powerful lines like, "It is not unity that destroys identity, it is fear." And, "If we walk toward one another, Christ walks with us." Coming from him, given his journey, it must have carried immense weight.
And the Pope's role during the gathering.
Not just presiding from a distance. He walked among the delegates, embraced Orthodox bishops, and he shared Valentina's letter again, the one from the search.
The letter from the Peruvian girl.
Yes, his point was simple. If a child sees Christ in us when we are wounded, then perhaps we are on the right path. It apparently really broke the ice, made it human.
Was Rossini there?
He was invited, yes,
Yeah.
as a guest. His reaction, noted in the sources, is telling, "I'm not sure what I'm watching, but it feels like something good."
And Toretti's quiet comment back to him.
It's the church, remembering how to be a witness, reflecting his own transformation right there.
This witness, it continued in small ways too.
Yes, the sources describe ongoing simple acts, visiting hospices, praying with the sick. He apparently left Valentina's wooden cross on the main altar for a while, saying, "Let this remind them God sees the small."
There's that story about the child in the hospice.
Right. Who recognized him? "Are you the man who got searched?" The Pope said yes. The child asked, "Did it hurt?" And his answer, "Not as much as watching others suffer, just devastatingly simple and focused."
And his private moments, the sources mention those too.
Glimpses, yes. Sitting in the second pew in the chapel, not the first, as a reminder that, even as Pope, I am still a man in need of mercy. Praying under the crucifix at St. John Lateran, reportedly whispering, "Thank you for letting me be wounded. Thank you for making it matter."
Even the letter from Valentina's grandmother.
Sent with the cross.
Yeah.
Her words capture how people saw him. The cross looks like you, simple and quiet. And then just profoundly, popes are people too. That public vulnerability made him relatable.
So the message that came out of this whole event, it really resonated.
It seems so. Pope Leo sent a letter, read in parishes globally. Not angry, not defensive, just saying Christ is the point. and asking this challenging question: what if we stopped trying to win and started trying to witness? Reports say people wept, applauded, some returned to church.
And his visit to a prison.
Yeah, telling inmates he was there as a man who has also been accused and who has also been forgiven, giving them rosaries, living out that message of shared humanity and mercy.
It all keeps coming back to that moment in Trastevere, doesn't it? That core insight.
That strength isn't in power, in the traditional sense, or defensiveness. It's found somewhere else, in humility, transparency, radical forgiveness.
So we've traced this incredible arc from that shocking public search, probably sparked by internal resistance.
It's this global ripple effect. Unexpected grace, lives changed, a whole different model of leadership emerging, lived out day by day.
We've seen the humble Pope choosing vulnerability, the conflicted detective finding compassion, the fearful official becoming a bridge builder, and that little girl's letter becoming this unlikely symbol.
It's quite a story.
It really is, and this deep dive into it, into transparency and vulnerability. What does it mean for you listening to this, thinking about these events?
It certainly leaves you with some powerful questions to chew on, doesn't it? Like, what does it actually take to stand still, exposed, when the world demands you fight back, defend yourself, project strength?
Can real authority, genuine authority, actually come not from demanding respect because of your title, but from earning trust, through being vulnerable, through showing mercy?
And maybe the biggest question.
Yeah.
What happens in any leadership role in any walk of life?
Yeah.
What happens when someone chooses to be truly seen, wounds and all?